Welcome back to the Optional Boss Podcast. We're your hosts, Josh and Tyler. And today is episode 45. There's 45 of these, Tyler.
That's
we keep spouting them out. People keep listening. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
At 45, it's like, not quite at the point of retiring, but you want to at least think about what life might be like when you do. Yeah, that's pretty
not that
wild,
we plan on stopping.
No, it definitely snuck up. That's for sure. I mean, we've been doing this for a while, but still, at the same time, to think that we're creeping up on the big 50. Ooh, and there are
and yes, we do have something planned.
Yes.
We have some exciting plans for 50.
We've had plans for episode 50 before the podcast started.
We had plans for episode 100 since before the podcast started.
Yep.
But we can't reveal that yet. And
we
it's
don't
so funny
have
that
plans
we got 50
for today.
And 100.
Wild, isn't it?
Today's episode, we are going to be talking about retro games today. And a little bit of this, that, and all above that kind of coincides with it. So we've touched on some things before. But before we get into that, Tyler, what have you been doing?
The same stuff. So,
all right.
I've been devoting a lot more of my available attention to finishing off SMT5. It is fantastic, and I'm almost there, but I'm not. It's weird. Normally, in like a turn-based RPG, I get to the 40+ hour mark, and I'm like, yeah, I'm ready to move on. And it's not that I'm not with this, but I don't know. I almost feel like I burned right through it, and yeah, I don't
just
know.
Took no time at all.
I'm gonna be kind of sad when it's over. So, but that's okay, because there are other things. I don't know how much detail I went into it before, but I had also been playing Dave the Diver, and I've been playing it a little less.
I think you mentioned it before, but you're just going in quick little spurts.
Yeah, so now that I have spent some decent time with it, it's good. It's fun. I can see how it got the reputation that it did. It feels like it falls under so many of those very addictive lather, rinse, repeat trappings of a really good Flash game.
And kind of follows suit with what I like to call the Stardew Valley effect.
It does have some rather Stardew Valley effect, especially when, I'm not going to get into too big of details, because if I'm not mistaken, you haven't really started it yet, have you?
I haven't even turned it on. So that is a to come, but yeah. We'll find out what I've been playing here in a minute.
Then to elaborate in the vaguest sense possible, the further you get in the game, the more the game adds. And that can be, a positive or a detriment, depending on how much you want to engage with all these additional things that the game expands upon. So it's good.
Fair enough.
It's very addictive, but it's also not one that I'm gonna put as much dedication as unlike something like SMT. It's a play it for a while, put it down for a bit, come back to it, kind of grind it out.
It's the perfect side game.
It is a really good side game, but there are bigger and better things to get to, at the end of this month, which is creeping. Summer's almost over. My goodness.
Yeah.
Visions of Mana is out really soon. Really soon. So soon that it has a demo. And I did it.
Yes, it does.
I did the thing. I tried the demo.
You end up trying it, eh?
Yeah,
because I know we were talking. This was off air, and you were very tempted not to touch it because you're like, I know I'm going to be getting it. I want to just experience it in its full. And then I think you said the same thing when Trials of Mana, the remake, came out. It had a demo.
Yeah, Trials.
You were going to hang on.
I don't.
And then you dove into it.
Oh no, yeah, I definitely was impatient, and I tried the demo for Trials. I remember now.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because you were so happy you could jump.
Mind blowing in the Mana series. It was genuinely well, okay, you could jump in Legend of Mana, but it was not jumping platforming. It was jumping as in this is a combat ability only, and it's not it's not like normal jumping.
Yeah.
And I can't speak to Dawn. That was a 3D game. It probably had some jumping. I don't know, but top down, this world, it'd be like if they did Link to the Past and you could jump.
Right.
That's
yeah.
it changes everything. So yeah, I couldn't help myself. I tried out the Visions of Mana demo, and I'm gonna say, if I am judging not the game itself, but just the demo as a demo, this is not a good demo.
Oh no.
And what I mean by that is, so I appreciate their approach that the demo doesn't like start you at the start of the game. They haven't done what they've done for a while, whereas like they give you the first like couple hours of the game and you can carry over. Like this is a random chunk in the story in a random area for, I don't know, I think I clocked maybe like 2 hours into it. There was a little bit more I could do, like some side quests and stuff, but it was
Okay.
I got to, and it tells you straight up when you like open up the demo. It's like it'll give you an area to play in, a little bit of questing to do, and it will end with a boss. Sweet. That's a fine build up for a demo. But because it slots you in such a random spot of the plot, which from what I've gleaned seems reasonably early in the adventure, but enough that like, you know, these are well-established characters who clearly did not meet at the beginning of the game, but know each other enough that they're just all in on everything, and you're just, oh yeah, so that is what we're doing, I guess. Let's,
you gotta find Miriam. Who's Miriam?
Exactly. So
why?
That bit's a little bit jarring, and also, so this game does some really cool mechanical stuff that I'm not going to explain because I know you want to go into this not knowing anything as well.
I have a lot of stuff on the go that is keeping me occupied.
Yeah, but I will say I really like what this game is doing, and with further elaboration, I'm sure it's really fucking cool. But because the demo gives you so much, doesn't explain enough of it, just the basics of it, it could be, and you're also locked. Like you can't progress, like let's say a skill tree beyond what the demo will let you. So you're locked into these certain skills. There isn't as much like control over it as you will obviously have in the main game. It makes sense, but it just feels like, I don't know, the whole demo, you're like, I feel like I'm missing something the whole time. Back to the matter though, what it really comes down to, gameplay, super fun. Super excited for this game. Oh.
Well, that's the key thing, right? Is the game's not fun. Why bother?
Yeah. No, this is, I'm happy Mana's back. It's pretty. I want to play the demo again because I did it on graphics mode instead of performance mode because I was like, it's Mana's game. It is very pretty. People who tried the demo do it on performance, I think, I don't know. Just get a
little
it's a B game in the
extra
best
hack
way
and
possible.
slash to your hack and slash.
I just there's some charming jank to it all, and it's honestly one of those things that because of what this series is, the amount of attention it normally gets, I'm so comfortable with it being there. But yeah, I think I want the gameplay to be smooth as well. So that's
fair.
Wow, I got a lot out of that demo. My goodness. How about you?
So I've just been playing Baldur's Gate whenever I've had a chance. Sorry, that is a bit of a lie. I have played a little bit of the NES Open Tournament. Not Open Tournament, Jesus. NES World Championship collection that they came out with back in July, end of July there. And it is phenomenal. But I'm going to dive into that when we actually go into our discussion. But yeah, for the most part, most of my attention has been brought to Baldur's Gate 3. And I'm on the third act. I'm about 80 hours in. It is phenomenal. It's great. Just so many wacky things that I don't really want to spoil either.
It was well worth the wait, was it?
Yes, absolutely. Have come across a few bugs. Nothing like overly major. If you haven't played Baldur's Gate, save often. I've only had a crash once, which is still more than ideal. But
I mean, when you're playing on console, when it crashes, yeah.
Yeah. It ain't like what they used to be. It ain't no
No,
retro of today.
no,
But
no.
yeah, no, it's very fantastic. I'm having quite the blast with it.
I don't know when I would find time on my very full and ever changing game schedule, but I do want to see. That's a game that would be really cool if it got a demo. But I feel like
Baldur's
Baldur's
Gate.
Gate has way too much to get across in a demo.
Yeah, so I know they do have a trial.
Hmm.
You can play for 2 hours, but I think that might
Drop
be on a PS Plus service.
well, and also drop in the hat compared to like you said, you're what 80 or more hours in and
Yeah,
still going.
still going. I gotta be getting close to the end. Granted, I have no idea what they're gonna pull out of their hat next. For any that know, two of the three.
Well, all
That's about
right
all I
then.
can say.
For those who know, there's that.
For those who
Uh,
know that if anyone's played it till the end, they know what I'm talking about. I'm sure.
so what would be when you get to the end of Baldur's Gate? Is there anything? I guess Visions is right around the corner. It'll probably be around that time. Yeah.
Yep. So there's going to be a few things. I do want to put some more time into the World Championship. I want to check out Dave the Diver because I picked that up.
Yeah.
Visions is coming around the corner.
Yeah.
God, there's actually a couple games that I have on pre-order for end of August. Outer Wilds for PS5 is coming out physical, so I'll be grabbing that. I have played it before. Absolutely fantastic. And maybe that'll be next year's challenge for you. Hint, hint.
Oh yeah, I have a game I have to play this year. Oh no.
Yes. What was that? Okami?
That's the one I picked for you, yes, and then I have to play
Yeah.
Disco Elysium.
Yeah, we still got to do that
Yeah.
at some point.
Too many games.
Yeah, my backlog has filled up quite a bit with stuff I don't know what I want to do, and part of me wants to return to some games that have comfort food with, or that I've played before because I want to experience again. One that's actually come up quite a bit recently, and they just made an announcement for something, is Blasphemous 2.
Ooh.
And one of the things is I played Blasphemous 2 on launch, and it was fine. It was good. I love Blasphemous 1 much more. Now, when I beat Blasphemous 2 was before they put a lot of quality of life and bug fixes into it. Such as no iframe, so you get like locked in a corner and die like instantly. Just shit like that. So I kind of want to experience it now and see what I think. Still wasn't a big fan of like being locked in every other room with a bunch of enemies. But Blasphemous 2 is back on my radar again. I want to check that out, and I'm excited to see what they come out with sometime in fall. That's all we know. It was just a silly little 20-second video of a close-up of the mea culpa zooming out, and then fall 2024.
Like honestly, if they just, made a new mode for Blasphemous 2 where it is literally the exact same game through and through, except you get the mea culpa instead of the other three, and like, I don't know, maybe change up some of the puzzles to suit the fact that you have that or something. I did like the platforming
Well, you'd have
challenges.
to find something out, right? So
like some of those platforming challenges where you had to switch between weapons midway were actually really clever. But
the platforming was a lot better in Blasphemous 2 versus 1.
I don't know, it just felt like the first one just stuck with me more.
Yep. I didn't have to pogo jump anything though in the second one.
You just gotta get that flow down for the pogo jump. It's so satisfying when you can figure it out and you're just like whacking lanterns for like, and it's barely a pogo jump. You get like, like 2 pixels of height from it, but it's so satisfying when you can get it down.
It's not even a pogo jump. It's just something that stops your downward momentum.
More or less, you get a little, but not.
You get a little nudge.
You can't call it a jump. That's for sure.
No. Also be tempted to do a playthrough of Sekiro again. I've been kind of itching for something like that. Just that sword clanginess. that I love so much. And
I think
also, just to kind of veer into the subject that we're going to be talking about, I want to play some games on my NES.
ain't that just the way?
Yeah,
Eh.
there's more to that I will elaborate once we get into the topic.
Well, should we start talking some retro gaming?
Yes, let's talk about retro games today, right after this. So, retro gaming today, the idea behind this episode is we're just going to talk about retro gaming and what it's like in today's world, exactly as it sounds. Run on sentence, don't mind me. What I was kind of hinting at by myself saying that play my NES is I just got a mod for it. And no sponsorship or anything like that. So this is truly just my opinions. But it's called the Nintendo Drawer, and it's essentially a new cartridge connector. A lot of the times, like I've replaced mine, I've made my own in the past just to get away from ones that kept failing. And this has been the best thing since sliced bread for this little NES of mine. It just works. Plug in my NES games, so I have actually played a couple of NES games just briefly, just turn them on and to get a few minutes in during free time. More so because I wanted to test this mod out, but yeah, I've been itching to play the NES, and it makes me really want to do a little modding for like an RGB thing or not, because these older systems, they do not look the greatest on modern televisions, and I do not have a CRT or space for a CRT in my house.
I have two.
Unfortunately.
I have two. One is really old.
Do they work?
Well, okay, they turn on. The trouble is, if we're talking authentic retro gaming today, here's an immediate step towards the struggle. So, the old wood panel one, it has, geez, I don't even know what you would call it, but it's like basically like the two prong connectors that like connect to the screws.
Yep.
Yeah, like old school. Like I remember having to hook up an NES with this, and like that was just what you did. Risk a little minor electrocution, whatever. And yeah, so obviously, like I'll admit, I haven't looked super hard, but finding such adapters these days are not exactly easy. So
no,
I can't say I've tested that one out. But beyond that, I have like, an old, I don't know, it's like a Zenith or something like that. It's just your standard like CRT you could pick up at Walmart that was in damn near every household at the time, right? And
right.
my only problem with that is I can't actually change it to an input channel without a remote. And so,
oh, really?
Yeah, and I have looked for a universal remote for it. I have not come across one. And that is my only hurdle to testing out. And I've been dying to because I have an N64, and with my N64, I don't have a lot of N64 games. I didn't really collect for it, but one game that I do have for it that I genuinely think might be one of the more enjoyable ways to play is Hexen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I don't know, I'd be super down, especially too because I think it has multiplayer. And like the N64 obviously was like king of multiplayer.
Oh, probably.
So to do it on like, old school CRT TV, like, oh, that'd be a good time. But that said, I was actually pondering the idea of like, what is your thoughts on visually enhancing retro games?
So I want to bring up, and I want to tell a story before we go further. I don't think I've told this on the podcast before. I don't even know if I've told you before. I'm sure I have. But you were speaking of the wood panel TV. And back when I was probably about 4, 5, Out of all things, I was playing Star Tropics. And, so we had the wood TV, and then we had a TV above. And the TV above, that was just a nice tiny one, where the wood one was like a 32-inch or whatever.
Yeah.
Old wood TV, like something you'd see out of the 60s. And so there I am playing Star Tropics on the wood TV. My brother and his friend were playing something on the tiny TV with the Super Nintendo. And that's kind of what we did. We swapped TVs and consoles depending on whose turn it was to have the big TV. It was a specialty. And I'm sure a lot of kids who grew up in the 80s, 90s can understand that to some kind of degree.
Oh, yeah.
And so my dad was working from home, or working overtime, but doing stuff at home. And my mom went over to the neighbors for a quick visit. Anyways, the TV shut off. And it's just like, oh, I figured, like, again, the blinking light, like, you always had to blow in the cartridges to get them to work and whatnot. And it's just like, oh, the Nintendo thing's not working. Dad, what, go bug him. And he's like, it's fine. And I can't do anything about it right now. And it's like, okay, so go turn it off. And just la-di-da-di-da. And it's like, Dad, can you come fix it now? And anyways, he eventually got up thinking like he's busy working. He gets up thinking he's just gonna, I'll try and get this working for you, son. No, the actual TV caught fire inside and it started smoking, and that's what actually got him out. So there he is, like lugging this big TV outside the house as it's on fire. My mom just starts walking back home for the neighbors. I can't leave you guys home for 5 fucking minutes. Just those wood TVs were great.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Still remember it like it was yesterday.
Not many. They don't combust like they used to, do they?
No, they don't.
Oh.
That will forever be ingrained in my memory, though. It's I'm not gonna say fondest, but it is.
It's
one
an
of those
interesting memory
moments
to have. That's for sure.
It is.
Yeah.
Star Tropics almost burned down my house.
Why is the TV broken? You see, your problem here is all that fire in there.
Yes, the fire and smoke. It does not like it.
You know what? There have been worse tragedies with those TVs. I remember when I think it was actually like the dawn of like flat screen TVs and whatnot, and people were like giving a lot of their old CRTs to kids, and it's just like that had to be outlawed because they're so terrifyingly heavy.
Yep.
Wild.
Oh well, you remember like growing up, grade 1, 2, they bring the TV in, they roll it into the classroom.
Yep.
On a giant TV stand.
Yeah.
Ever see one of those things fall? Like they hit the corner of a rug in one of those early classes?
There would be a hilarious
it makes a
clip
boom
that we could insert from, if this was a video podcast, we could actually insert, there's a scene, I think it's in the Beavis and Butthead movie, where they're trying to wheel out their TV from their school. They're just taking it, and it goes down the stairs. And that would be the perfect visual representation of what the point we're trying to get across is here.
Yes.
Oh yeah, those things were...
If you knew how heavy those TVs were...
60 pounds
you would
on
understand
the
earthquake. You would understand the earthquake.
Like, okay.
Rolling in off one of those things.
There's a reason my CRTs are in the basement, because that is where they will die. They're already in their grave. They just need to become deceased. But hopefully not before I can play some Hexen on them. That would be appreciated.
Yes. So you're asking about like visual fidelity?
Yes.
With retro games?
Yes.
So that makes me think of like emulators and stuff.
Yeah.
And like emulation has come a long way. Emulation could be absolutely fantastic. And you know what? I don't know if it's okay to actually endorse this or not. Like, I'm not saying go pirate, but if you can't buy it from the company, there's ways.
I am pro people playing games. However you enjoy your video games, go enjoy your video games.
As far as I'm concerned, yes, play Chrono Trigger. However, do not buy Chrono Trigger unless you can actually buy it from the developers.
I should play Chrono Trigger soon.
Like, if they aren't gonna sell me a cartridge at a normal cost, then I'll be more than happy to find ways to play it.
Yeah, but hey, chip them a few dollars. Get it on Steam or something.
Yeah,
It's the
that's always an option.
It's the ethical middle ground.
As for like visual fidelities and stuff, like a lot of these emulators, which is kind of what I'm going at when I'm talking about this, because I haven't actually experienced like hardware mods that increase fidelity, like your HDMI mods or your RGB mods and whatnot. I'd love to, but they are goddamn expensive.
I've actually been thinking about looking into, what is it, the M Classic, the one that's for the Switch. I think it works with more than just the Switch. Like, I think you can use it on like GameCube and stuff. But yeah, it just ups the rendering. It's in some cases very minor, in some cases very noticeable. But yeah.
So with emulation, you always got these different filters, and I'm sure that there's points to all of them. I very rarely ever use any of them. Sometimes the scaling, just to make it look a little more beefy when it's much higher screen, especially on like a Game Boy Advance game, right? Like you blow those games up, they are meant for smaller screens. So you're going to notice a lot of like, you're going to lose a lot of detail with enlarging it. Without keeping its aspect ratio anyways. There's always the one, and I don't know what the filter is called, and I don't know, maybe this is my boomer take, but it smooths out all the pixels.
Yeah, the smoothing
and
filter
everything
is
just looks like
just the grossest thing you could do to games.
Oh, it hurts my soul.
It looks like cheap and fake.
It looks like if people were making mobile games of today for Nokia.
Yeah. Well, okay, so my thoughts on it, because I know that one of the beauties of like old CRT TVs is because they used to develop games around those screens, so you would actually hide a lot of their imperfections with, the lower fidelity graphics because of the screen quality. And same with the aspect ratio. Like this was it was developing for the tech at the time. Now that we have moved beyond that tech, things will look a little more dated. Now that said, because I did a lot of emulating when I was younger, I played a lot of these games on just a PC. So I was already used to that more crisp, pixel perfect look to a lot of these retro games. Not to mention as well, like when I was younger, like I used to mess around by doing a whole bunch of like pixel art and sprite sheets and stuff like that. And I've grown a real appreciation for just those sharp, chunky pixels. And the smoothing filter is like, if you took like a little guy made out of like plasticine or something, you just smush him with your thumb. But you just do that with everything. It's just flat and gross. It's blended together.
It's like you want to make claymation, but you're too lazy to do claymation.
Yeah, so you just do like clay portraits, and they're bad, and you shouldn't have bothered. CRT filters, on the other hand, I think are cute, but I never actually like want to use them.
Yeah, because I haven't found a good one.
No.
I'll say that. Like, a lot of them tend to, like, even in well, look at Blasphemous. It has a CRT filter. And a lot of them just have, like, they overemphasize the CRT-ness of it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't actually get the true effect. Now, I know there's a program called Reshade. And it's for PC. I don't know the logistics. I've only used it the once. I'll be completely honest. But it hooks into the games that you're playing, and if you did that with Blasphemous 2, the CRT filter in that actually enhanced the quality of the pixel art.
Weird.
But outside of that, that is the only one that I've actually seen.
Interesting.
Granted, I haven't used Reshade aside from once. I used on, oh god, what was it? Valheim.
Oh yeah, okay.
But
that was short-lived.
Yeah, like if you play any of these retro consoles and you aren't into the modding market or anything, and you just plug them into like one of your modern age TVs, it's not going to look pretty. It's not going to look sharp. Like, it's playable still. Yeah, absolutely. But it could be a lot better, and it doesn't bring that nostalgia factor back to you. And
so a good when you comparison to this
videotape, when you videotape a CRT screen with your phone or something, you always had those lines flickering and all that kind of stuff. It looks like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay, so when I play things on a modern TV with my Retron 5, which basically it's a weird device because you plug your cartridges in, but it doesn't actually like play it as if a console would. I'm pretty sure what it does is it rips a ROM off of the cartridge and emulates it.
Yeah.
So for all those people at home, sorry if you don't know what that's all about. But anyway, it's not quite the same as just plugging it into your old Super NES. And due to that, it's the resolution's a little bit off. Because it's obviously accommodating for your bigger TV, and then you got issues like scan lines, and it's not easy to replicate retro, is it?
There's a lot of things now, like this is one of the things I hate, because like if I want to go back to the Super Nintendo and NES era, and I want those like nice crisp lines that I remember growing up with without having any special mods, special filter, or what are those called? Like a Frame Meister or anything like that, or a CRT TV. Emulation is going to be the way to go. But at the same time, I love the original hardware, and I want to use the original hardware. So it's like, I just deal with it. Like I have my N64, my NES, my Super Nintendo all hooked up on my desk here. And now, with that said, if I can... okay, so the Switch. We've talked about Switch Online and how they have the individual controllers. Mm-hmm. And truth be told, I just got a Sega Genesis controller from Nintendo for the Switch Online service. Mainly because I want to check out a lot of these Sega games. Because as we've said in previous episodes, we don't know the Sega culture nearly that much. More so myself. So it would be kind of neat. Be nice to actually experience, and I like the retro controllers. I like the way that it was. Those controllers, it's take N64 for example. If you played Super Mario 64 with anything but the N64 controller, it's gonna feel awkward.
Yeah,
and I don't care what anyone says. That's just how it is. And great example of that. And I know we've talked bad about this before, but GoldenEye has aged terribly with its control scheme. Like, it could have done, it's on the online service, and when it came out, everyone's like, this is terrible. What is up with this? Why is it so bad? And it's like, this is how it was back in the day. Yep. Just, that's what we're used to, and we've been so privileged with our dual analog controls.
So, I'm gonna
there's
give a
lot
point to the N64, and one of the reasons why. So, Z, the button that was on the back of the controller for the N64, in the most perfect trigger position. And now
it is
Z
absolutely
is usually it's your L2, what most controllers would call it. Nintendo has Z and ZR, but for most N64 games, if you're playing on the online service, it is using L2 per se for the Z button. And that doesn't feel nearly as satisfying as that perfectly curled behind the inside of your knuckle, just perfect trigger. Like, that's the one thing the N64 does super well. But you gotta hold
it's actually kind of just with that knowledge, or what you just said there, it's kind of funny how we went from using the left hand to pull the trigger to right hand to pull the trigger.
For the most part, yeah. Because who was holding it the other way with their D-pad and the trigger? That's not how you N64 gamed. You either both to the outside or middle and outside.
Yeah, no. And that controller was atrocious, and the N64 needs it.
No, I have a worse controller. the controller that came with
but
my
the
Retron
N64 games, N64 games need that N64 controller. It's just, it feels so unnatural without it.
There are a few games that I can think of that, okay, so natively porting these games is damn near impossible to do. You have to completely revamp the controls to get them. And most of that has to do with the fact that there was a separate option entirely to control the camera and you just had to shift it each time you had to move it, or your camera was on the shoulders.
Yes. Especially back in the early PS2, PS1 era.
Actually, the N64 the C button is like, they are called C buttons because they
The
are most
cameras.
intended as the camera. Yes.
Yes.
Whole 4 buttons dedicated to it.
Yep.
1 stick.
1 stick.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how it was.
Yep.
And you know what? We loved it.
But
the amount of times I played GoldenEye or Perfect Dark, but doing it nowadays, first off, feels disgusting. Second off, almost impossible without a N64 controller. Now,
isn't it
with that
wild
said,
to think
because
of
you
6
mentioned
face buttons? 6 face buttons? 7 if you count start.
I mean, that's not too wild because look at the Sega 6-button controller.
I know, but that was like, extra with purpose, right? That was mostly for fighting games. Otherwise, like, the 3 was just... And you know what the weird thing is? When you look at the Sega 6-button controller, it's actually just the same amount of buttons as a SNES controller, just all put together. Just crammed them on the front.
So I'm going to do a saving grace for GoldenEye here after I just like call it terrible and everything. There is a port that someone did for the PC where they cleaned it all up, gave it proper mouse support and keyboard support. That thing was never meant for controllers. That thing runs like butter.
I could see that, yeah.
It is absolutely wonderful at 60 frames. This is turning into a controller episode.
Well, so
but
funny enough,
honestly,
the
Switch Online, the Switch Online and the mini consoles have been a fantastic way to actually experience some of these games in a higher fidelity version without emulation, while still getting that semi original hardware feel.
Took a while, but the emulation, the official emulation, finally got to a, your average consumer's not going to bat an eye, but it's nowhere near as bad as those old At Games consoles where you're like, wow, Sonic B, chugging.
They just forgot the blast processor, that's all.
You can't replicate it because it was never there. But it is funny to think, okay, so what would you say was your first experience or like that you can recall with quote unquote modern retro gaming? Actually, before you answer that, where does retro start for you?
Where does retro start for me?
Yeah.
When I think retro, realistically, like I think N64 and beforehand. Just because that was kind of like the pinnacle when they were trying to figure things out.
Yeah. Yeah.
If that makes sense. Like they figured out pixel art and then they perfected pixel art. To a point anyways, with the Super Nintendo. N64 was like the beginning era of 3D graphics. Same with the PlayStation 1 and 2.
I was going to say, PlayStation 2 and prior is pretty much like my timeline for retro. Like, so you could lump in GameCube and even original Xbox into that, because even though they were vastly superior than their predecessors, that now, comparatively, they'd be feeling retro. I don't know.
Yeah, and, well, here's the thing, like...
It still felt experimental.
We were calling retro gaming, like, N64 era, during the Wii era.
Yep.
And it's been multiple... the Wii was, 2005? So it's been about 20 years since the Wii. That's gross. It was only 10-year difference between Wii and N64.
It's wild, isn't it?
Ish. Because it was 96 for the N64.
Yeah. The Wii still doesn't feel too retro to me, though. Wii and 360.
No.
DS, kind of. But 3DS, no.
This is where it kind of gets weird, because like there's some people who that time difference is exactly for them, right?
Yep.
Like when they talk about retro, as much as it makes us feel old, it's a 3D world for them.
Yeah.
Like their N64 is our NES, or their Xbox 360 is our N64, right?
Yeah.
Not that I like saying that out loud, but at the same time, like that's their retro, and I always love that whole question is, what do you consider retro? And it's like, well, it really depends, because the things that we call retro, we've been calling retro for 20 years now. Where the things that we say aren't retro for these guys, it's 10 years or 25 years. Right? It's
a real weird perspective.
What's that?
I have heard just, I'm watching stuff online just about video games, as I do, and someone saying how they got their Switch when they were like, just starting high school or just into high school, and now they have kids. Like, when the Switch came out, they were in their, like, quote unquote, still childlike years, and the Switch still the current gen, and a new generation has cropped up. So yeah, it's not. It doesn't take long for something to become retro. That's for sure. Depending on who you ask, mind you, but
I guess in one factor, did it survive Y2K?
Not much
that
did.
considered
No one
retro?
really talks about that though.
No.
Dark times.
As for your other question, when did I first experience modern retro?
Okay, do you want me to give you an example of what I mean, or?
Well, I was actually going to say the Wii Virtual Console.
That is a really good place to
just because that was a modern thing, and out of all things, again, I bring it up all the time now. More so recently, actually. I don't know what it is, but Star Tropics. I remember seeing Star Tropics in there and be like, "Holy shit!" Because I didn't know anyone else who owned this game or even played the game, right? So I'd ask, "Oh, have you played Star Tropics?" No, and it just seemed like this big anomaly for me. And this is before internet era and whatnot, right? Just getting into it before social media was really a big boom.
Yeah,
so it's talking to people. It's what the fuck, Star Tropics? It's has no one played this game? Is this an anomaly? And now that internet is very prevalent in our everyday lives, it's oh yeah, people know about it, people have played it, people love it, some people hate it. And but seeing on the Wii Virtual Console and just the whole Virtual Console idea of hey, I can actually get these games on this system and play them again, and for what at the time anyways seemed like a really good quality, so I loved it.
See, it's weird because we're actually in such a weird spot because, yes, there were technically things that you could have considered retro gaming when we were kids, right? There was Atari, and I believe, if you're not, it was the Commodore that you had as a kid?
Yep, we had a Commodore 64.
Yep. So, but even still, gaming was still kind of in those ugly years that I feel even when you were younger, even if you knew the Commodore was older than the NES, they didn't seem too estranged from each other, right?
No, it was just a different platform to play a game.
Exactly. So we don't really have much childhood with any influence of retro gaming, but we saw nothing but advancements in gaming. As where there are now, obviously kids actively today where retro shit already is existing and prominent in the cultural zeitgeist, right? So you talk about something like Mario or Mega Man or stuff like that. Yeah, they are still, well, maybe not as much Mega Man, but very known IPs in today's media, but they're actually just identified as that's vintage or retro.
Right.
So,
and it's just like anything that has pixel art nowadays that are coming out nowadays that is still considered retro.
Retro inspired, yes.
Yeah.
So I would say for myself,
Shovel Knight.
Shovel Knight's so good. My first experience with quote unquote retro gaming was probably with one of those Pac-Man plug and play kind of Namco things.
Those things, yeah.
Yeah.
It's the one game and you plug it into the TV and it's the controller too.
Yeah,
it's the console controller is one thing.
And mine was a Namco collection, so I think it had 6 games. I believe it had Pac-Man, Dig Dug, the racing game, which I do not recall. I think it's just Rally X or something like that.
Okay.
And a couple others. I think
probably Galaga or Space Invaders and stuff.
Yeah, and it felt obviously older than most things I played. That would probably be where retro gaming would have been for our generation, would be old arcade titles. And
oh, absolutely, because arcades were very prevalent, especially back in the day, right? When video games first started becoming a thing. Even Donkey Kong.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Donkey Kong
does something
on
that
an Atari, did it not?
Yes, I believe
it was an original arcade, but it did have a Atari port, and then they went on to make their own console.
Yeah, I was thinking of Mario Bros, which had an arcade port, which is weird
Right.
shit. But yeah, that would have been like for what to me as a kid would have felt like retro gaming, and it was really cool. It was fascinating because it was like old school, but I had never experienced it before, and it felt good to. I mean, obviously the plug and plays are far from the most authentic, but like it had the joystick, it had a button. It felt like
Yep.
I'm playing these old arcade games, and that was pretty cool. And
So, admittedly, like talking about that, my wife one Christmas, like 3, 4 Christmases ago, and I just remembered about this because I was going through my storage bins today and I found it. Got me like this little desktop, little arcade thing, and it has like 100 games, just random ones, right? Like knockoff Pac-Man and stuff. So, but it has like a Pac-Man cover to it. It's just this cheap little thing, right? She got it because it's a humor gift, right?
yeah.
So get that out, and it's just like hanging onto the joystick. You're using your thumb and your index finger trying to move it around. Like this thing is tiny, but yeah, with that had a bunch of retro games on it too, from like the arcade era.
What is the
Like,
most peculiar one of those that you have either seen or had, even if it's like a collection of games or just one specific game?
that's a good question. There's a bunch of them around. I can't really think of one in particular. I think there was a Pac-Man one where it looked like a Pac-Man itself, and you had to open up his mouth.
Oh, that's weird. That's so weird. And
I
just
think.
play with Pac-Man in your hands.
I don't think I don't think that was a dream. If it was, shit.
So there's one that
arcade Pac-Man where you're reaching into his mouth.
there's one I picked up, and you know what? For such a gimmicky product, it actually like is kind of nice when you use it, and it looks like to most people, if it, like they looked at it, they like think it looks like a weird chunky like calculator, but it's made to look like those really old desktop computers. Like I don't know what kind of brand you would say, but like big chunky towers and squares, and it's just
Yep.
it's just Oregon Trail to go. Yeah, and the best part is like the on-off button is like just a floppy disk slot that you like push the floppy disk into it to power it on.
Oh, that's wonderful.
It emulates surprisingly well. Like this is actually one of the nicest ways to play Oregon Trail that I've ever done. I'm not like a huge enthusiast. I'm sure someone could tell me way better ways to do it. But
Oh yeah.
it's not pocket sized. It would be like fitting
Or the fact that Oregon Trail has a remaster coming out.
of one of multiple. It's gotten so many remasters. It's gotten weird sequels, spin-offs.
But it's coming out. Yeah, it's coming out on Switch and PS5 and stuff.
Yeah, I saw that. And like I don't want it, but like I might want it. I don't know.
It's just one of those. I want it because I feel like this is a terrible idea.
Oregon Trail's fun, but it is dumb. But it's fun because it's dumb. So,
Yep.
it's like and this is only going to reach so much of our audience given our apparent reach. But Cross Country Canada, like, oh come on, you played Cross Country Canada, didn't you? Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah.
What even was the point? Because I know when I was playing it in school, I was clearly playing it wrong.
I don't know.
I remember.
I don't. I know it's. I can kind of visualize it in my head, but I can't.
So my memories of playing Cross Country Canada, it's for those who know or do not know, it's about trucking across Canada in a freight truck and delivering cargo. I had no idea, I didn't know where to find my destinations, pick up cargo or anything. I just remember when I was playing it, my cargo that I was trying to get was, and it would let you type it in. So I said Game Boys. And I would always put the chains on my tires, and I would always pick up the hitchhikers, and it would always go poorly for me.
Oh. So I'm looking up pictures of it right now. Yes, I remember this. I do not.
You're just trucking.
So I don't think I've actually played this. I've tried it. Because we used to have, and I think I mentioned this on the DOS episode, but we had a like 101 game multi-CDs and whatnot.
Oh,
there
yeah.
was one of them on there, and it wouldn't ever work. It would bring it up to the title screen and stop.
Yeah, no, if you're
So I don't think I
ever
actually
going
ever
down,
played it.
You're
but
going
I
down the
have
DOS
got to the
rabbit
title
hole.
screen.
Go give it a shot. It's fucking cross country Canada.
I think one of the wackiest retro consoles I saw, and quote unquote console, was the Commodore 64, which I'm kind of wishing I did pick up, but at the same time, it would be
the Mini.
It would be one of those like novelties that why did I pick this up? This is useless. I just wanted to point at it and be like, isn't this fucked up? I feel like that's the only purpose I would actually pick it up.
You know what's wild about those is people were loading up their own homebrews on there and stuff. Like,
I could believe that. Like,
yeah.
okay, I'll fully admit, like my NES and SNES and PlayStation Minis all are modded, and my Sega Genesis remains unturned on. I don't think I've turned it on once.
It's got a good collection on it.
Yeah, and
PlayStation
that's
Mini
the thing.
booted up once.
So the PlayStation Mini I have modded up. And that's actually how I first played Silent Hill 1. And Resident Evil 1, actually, come to think of it. But I replaced the version because I didn't want the PAL version. What do you think is the best course of action for playing retro games nowadays?
Okay, so there's a lot of different ways to look at that.
Because we have a lot of avenues nowadays, and then some are still legally questionable.
Yeah. there are a lot of ways of
okay. I'm going to ask you this first. What do you think about original hardware versus emulation?
Okay, my personal thoughts on it are, if I have the opportunity for original hardware, I am going to say it is the most comfortable and enjoyable way to play. That said, though, I can also acknowledge that original hardware, especially when, like, you know, your reach for it is very narrow, like I said, you know, N64 just for Hexen, I'm not really often going to go through all of the hassle for doing that as my primary gaming. And this is where emulation is a huge convenience. And even as someone who loves physical media, I can still acknowledge that I am enjoying the convenience of modern gaming. Like, for example, the Switch Online is a great example. The only problem with it is, one, if you don't have the official hardware, which is where the supplemental hardware comes in, which is great, it doesn't feel so right. Like, I hate using Joy-Cons for retro games. I really do.
Yes.
The Pro Controller is good for some, but it's not great for everything. The D-pad on it, though better, is still, well, it's actually a D-pad. It's still not what I would prefer, right? But their official online controllers, which sucks because they're niche and expensive, are so goddamn good.
Yes, it really is a blast from the past.
And I think if it weren't for that, like, I like popping up, like, you know, the N64 games and whatnot and just booting them up and I'll fuck around, but I rarely, like, actually take them seriously, as where with the Super Nintendo games, because I have that controller, and now the NES ones, now that I got those, which it looks so dumb on the Switch, I love it. It's
Dumbo ears.
Having the way that I personally want it to feel, having it feel that way goes a long way for me when it comes to retro gaming. So
absolutely,
I think there is a middle ground, but I will say emulation as a whole is a lot more convenient and, pending your views on it, a lot more freeing. Like, there's so much shit out there. It's mind-blowing.
Yes. So one of my biggest issues with emulation is, like, yes, there's lots of stuff to play with. Lots of things to check out that you can't buy legally anymore. So you're buying it off a third party anyways. So screw that. Again, if the developer's not getting any money, I think emulation is fine. Maybe not still legal, but still. That's the standpoint. With emulation, you could download 20 things and then you're just tinkering with things. I find, like, whenever it's time to, if I was ever going to emulate something, I never stick with it because I do not have that much invested in it. It was just a pick up and go. It was like a Vine or a Reel or a TikTok. It's just play with it for a bit, be done with it. I never got invested in anything I emulated. So now, with that said, if I got it onto, like, say, a SNES game onto my SNES Classic and played it that way with as authentic as I could, or make a bootleg cartridge of one, Um, I feel like I actually stick with it more, and it feels a little more, um, for lack of better term, special.
Okay, so it's a
If that
weird
makes sense.
comparison to make because we're actively not advocating for piracy when I say it feels more like you actually have it. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And I also understand too one of the issues with the ease of emulation, especially when you like, I want to play this and I want to play this. You get so many of these things. You can get the kind of like the streaming service fatigue that is so prevalent in today's culture, where there are so many things that you want to do that you're already tired thinking about doing any of them, so you'll do none of them. And it's one of my biggest issues with things like PlayStation Now and Game Pass, and to a lesser extent the Switch Online service. But I find with Switch Online, like it's a little easier to navigate the like the retro games for something I would rather play. Maybe it's just because I really like retro games. Maybe it's because they don't seem as an intimidating of a time investment.
yep. And I mean, the amount of retro games I've downloaded on the not the PS Now, but the classic PlayStation Classic catalog, and still haven't started. Like Abe's Odyssey, I've downloaded probably about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Still haven't started it up. I just removed it from PlayStation just because I don't. It's a game that I really wanted to play, but just don't care.
I can
Now
see
there is
that.
the new and tasty version on Switch that I could always go and get if I
Yeah.
could find a copy, anyways. And then
Yeah.
I'd probably be more inclined to actually play it.
The Switch has been a wonder
It's
for retro gaming, just in general.
yeah. So like talking on modern retro games today, the whole topic. We've talked about collections before. And remasters. Granted that remaster episode was a little lackluster, fully admit. I think that was episode 3 or something.
Oh,
But
we're
like
going
Legend
that
of Mana
back.
remaster.
Yeah.
Sorry?
If we're going that far back, yeah, I think they're all pretty lackluster.
Yeah. I'd say the first 10 episodes are pretty rough.
Yeah.
If you've stuck with us since the beginning, thank you so much.
Yeah.
But yeah, like we got Legend of Mana remastered, which was prettied up for modern consoles. We have the retro collections, which yes, they are emulation of a form, but it's an official emulation from the actual developers, or maybe not the exact developers, but the publication, the rights owners.
Does the Pixel
So like
remasters count as retro?
I mean, technically yes, yes.
Ish. They're a big ol' ish. But that collection, that's just my way of saying, people, it's gonna be purchasable again. Get it, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah.
I still have yet to play 4.
Well, we'll get there at some point.
Just
But
being too
I think
busy.
the retro collections are great. I am always up for a new. I've bought so many collections since the Switch came out, like the Jurassic Park collection, the Ninja Turtles collection, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, even if I only like one
Castlevania
game,
Advance.
yeah. I haven't got
Yeah.
it yet, but I want to pick up a copy of like the Disney collection that had like Lion King and Aladdin and
Jungle Book.
was it Jungle Book was the one that they added with the re-release?
Yes.
Yeah, I want those. I
Yeah,
know
no,
I
think
like
that would be good. I'd like to
Aladdin.
play them again, just for nostalgia's sake.
Well, I know I like the Aladdin for SNES. Like, that is a Capcom classic, but everyone's like, oh, the Genesis one's better. And even if I don't think so, an opportunity to try them both side by side and the Game Boy one? Fuck yeah.
Here's the thing. The SNES director for Aladdin thinks the Genesis one is better.
That's neat.
So
I'm just a Capcom fanboy.
So because something else just came out the other day, and out of all things, its latest game got mod support. That's fucking wild. Speaking of retro games today, and a game that will never, ever, ever die. Doom 1 and 2.
I thought you were going to say Castle Crashers, because that also got random DLC. But yeah, Doom is far more retro.
Yes. No. Doom runs on anything. I know Limited Run is making a cartridge of Doom, which I
honestly,
think
that's kind of cool.
I wonder if it is cool, sure, but I wonder if it runs just as bad as the cartridge one on Super Nintendo, which I actually have on my shelf, and
that's
it's
one of
red.
the things they're boasting.
So I think it's really funny that they made it blue.
It has it actually performs well. It has the new levels. Yeah, like apparently they went all out with actually making this just a better way to play Doom on the SNES, which if so, that's hilarious.
No, that's good accountability, actually.
Yeah.
Like, it was phenomenon that they actually, like, someone got Doom to actually run on the Super Nintendo. Uh let alone to see them re-release it is hilarious.
What's funny is that the Super Nintendo one is not the worst console version of its day.
No, it was the Jaguar?
I can't remember if it was the Jaguar or the 32X that had the most atrocious Doom.
I know the 32X version has the label upside down on its spine.
Ah. What a train wreck of
So
a
if
console
you line
add-on.
up all your 32X games, Doom is upside down.
Neat.
So if you're someone who likes spines all correlated with one another, that'll drive you fucking up the walls.
Yeah. Just like the European games in my
Um,
Switch collection. Jeez.
yes. And for anyone who doesn't know about that, Europeans Switch games have the name in the center of the spine, where North America is all against the top of the spine.
Makes that alphabet look real weird.
Yes. What are the retro things in modern age? Like, okay, so how about this? If you were going to play a game, say you had a copy on the Super Nintendo,
Yeah.
it's available on the Switch Online, and it's also purchasable or obtainable in like a collection. What would be your ideal way to actually play? Like, to actually play, not so much own. Let's ignore like physical ownership and whatnot. How would you play it?
Mm.
What would be your go-to?
See, it's amazing how easy that question should be and also how difficult that question is. Because
Right?
my instinctual reaction says, I obviously want to play it the authentic way. That feels the best, which is true. But I also know that, especially for solely one game, if it's on a collection too, like if something came out for Switch on there's a collection that I do hope manifests into existence because Sunsoft has been releasing some of their older titles on the Switch, but individually that they do sometimes with retro games, which, okay, I'd like that this is happening, but because I'm like so stubborn as a physical collector, I never get these games that I want when they come out. But they just released the first two Arrow the Acrobat games. They are cult classics. Doesn't mean they're good, but they're not bad.
Okay.
I guess the Game Boy Advance remake of the first one also got its own individual release on Switch. But more importantly than that, and again, these are all like, I don't know, I think like $6 a piece. They are releasing Zero the Kamikaze Squirrel, which is one, a delightfully obscure SNES and Genesis game, but two, also one of those, like, if you're gonna collect it retro, stupid expensive games. Like, last I checked, which is things have gotten much more expensive since, it was like $300 for the cartridge on the cheap. Like, very, very rare and expensive SNES game.
Yeah.
So give me those. And the availability, again, with these controllers as well, I will probably say that my actual reaction would be to play it on Switch. What I would actually do, though, is buy them both, because I'm not smart about stuff like that.
Well, this is what I'm saying. You have all options available to you. You have the physical. It's also on Switch Online, and you can also play it on the original hardware.
Sometimes it's fun to play it on not the original hardware, too. Okay, I'm going to make my very stupid but poignant argument. I have Mega Man 1 through 6 on NES. I have Mega Man 1 through 6 on my Wii. I have Mega Man 1 through 6 on my 3DS. And I have Mega Man 1 through 6 on my Switch. Possibly more than once. So that's what I'm going to do. And I have Mega Man 1 through 6 on my GameCube. All drastically different ways to play the same game. If you really, really want to split hairs, I have Mega Man 1 to 3 on the Genesis as a repro, and on the Genesis Mini, and on the Switch again. So,
Fair.
So I'm gonna do it all and none of it at the same time.
Yep. No, I think the convenience factor is a big thing. Like, granted, it's a reproduction, but I have Earthbound for Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's also on the SNES Classic and the SNES Online, I'm just going to do it on SNES Online.
Yep.
For one, it's going to look better than if I use my Super Nintendo, because I don't have any mods for that to make it look clean.
So there
just
is,
an overall
however,
simpler experience.
There is, however, one facet of retro gaming that I am always, and I will willingly go out of my way to play it in its original form, and that is Game Boy games. Game Boy and DS games, especially DS games, because they haven't really made a comfortable way to replicate that. It's amazing how stupid and how intricate the DS is. But if I'm going to play a Game Boy or a Game Boy Advance game, I will always prefer to actually pop it in my Game Boy Advance, specifically like my original model that's the wider version. Sometimes the micro. If I'm feeling a little weird, I'll go get that micro. But yeah, and there's no more comfortable way. It's cool that on the Switch I can play these games bigger or even on the TV. And Game Boy Advance games even feel really good with the SNES controller because even though it's a couple less buttons, they're so close to each other, right?
Yeah.
But I will always pick the original, even if there are collections. But I will, again, still buy the collections either way.
No, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, handhelds isn't even something I thought about. Handheld games, just being able to pop it in, like that's a whole experience on itself. And I'm sure like newer ages than us don't quite understand, but there's just something satisfying about like the old cartridge clicks.
Just hits different, and like, you know what, that screen might be super tiny by today's standards, but it's how it's supposed to be. It still looks good for how it
and
does.
Not backlit.
You know what? Also, this is something that, like, you know, music is subjective. I highly understand that, but I love even like games with not notoriously good music. I just love those old beeps and bops of Game Boy, the NES, the Game Boy Advance, like Super Nintendo. I love it. Even if it's just sound effects. Like, I don't know if it triggers the nostalgia and it just feels good, but it does feel good.
No, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Got anything else to add?
Despite all of this gushing about retro games, I'm still just as bad for playing new games.
Yep.
And that's the problem. And we discuss this all the time, but it's just the fact that there's so many games, so much you want to do, and not enough time to do it. But
a lot of availability now.
I will say there is one thing that we haven't really elaborated on, but it's also not exactly easy to elaborate on. I find it is difficult, though. Like, I love playing retro games. I love trying new ones. But I do find, I guess, maybe just due to maybe the small in nature they are compared to the modern day time sinks, I very rarely finish something that I'm just trying out that's retro.
Oh, okay. So with that said, what would be a game considered retro that you didn't play that people love till later on in life?
Oh, Secret of Mana. Well,
Secret
okay,
Mana, yeah.
that doesn't really count, though.
You played that beforehand too.
Yeah. See, and then when you say people love, I was gonna say Demon's Crest, and I fucking love Demon Crest, but that one's a little bit more niche.
Yep. That's fine. Like, people still love it.
Super Metroid's in a similar camp, but also like I had tried it a couple times before, and I got like my first serious playthrough with it, and like, yeah, it was really good. When I think of beloved, though, that's where it gets a little bit tricky. How about you?
Well, so for me, there's a couple. Crystalis.
Yeah.
Not that I finished it, but I got a good way through. Then I got distracted with newer, shinier things that came out. I know it has quite its fan base. Also has quite its haters, but still. Zelda 2. I mean, that's very hit and miss with people as well, but I didn't play it till I was adult. Same with Super Metroid, actually. I never played it growing up. I didn't even understand what Samus was till, I want to say Smash Brothers for the N64.
He's a lady.
Whoa, so I didn't...
Whoa, yeah, I know.
I didn't even play, like, any Metroid till I think my first Metroid game was Prime on the GameCube.
That's a weird
So
that's a weird take. Just because, and I know you're
right,
far from the first person to do it, but they're so drastically different for being the same thing.
they are very different. I mean, some baseline principles the same, sure, but
I feel like going
years,
from Prime to standard Metroid though, like especially if like that is your identity of Metroid, you'd be like, what the hell is this?
to an extent, yeah. I think it's kind of funny because I don't think I've always played retro games. I've always loved retro games, but I always stuck with what I knew. And
Yep.
I think when the world kind of got shut down in 2020, is more when I started actually exploring a lot of retro games that I never played and I really should have. So I'm just thinking now, like the Mega Man games I really got into. Before the only one that I played was Mega Man X.
Yeah.
The first three Castlevanias.
Yep.
My first Castlevania was Circle of the Moon and Aria of Sorrow. Aside from that, I haven't played any of the other ones. Crystalis, I mentioned that already. I've gone back. I played Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 3. And 6, actually.
6 is so good.
Earthbound.
Chrono Trigger.
And Mother 1. Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger was definitely another one. I was working my way up to that. Ghosts and Goblins. It's still actually kind of funny. I have not beat Zelda 1.
No, me neither.
Really do that one day.
I booted up and then I'm like, yeah, this is Zelda 1. And I might get 3 dungeons in, and I'm like, yeah, I'm Zelda'd out. Which is a shame, because I really liked top-down Zelda. But it's because of Link to the Past. It's just way better. And that's another tricky thing when it comes to some retro gaming, is if a franchise has been long running, it can be hard to go to something that is the same, but less of that formula. Now, that very much
I'll get behind that for one weird fact that you may hate me for. And I will say that always growing up with Mega Man X and then experiencing actual Mega Man.
Oh, no, that's a very fair take. And I feel like a lot of people had that. See, I had experienced Mega Man X, I believe, before, but I had rented the Mega Man game so often, and it would be either one of the Mega Man X games or Mega Man 7 that I would rent. And the first couple times I got 7 or went back and forth, it would be like, this feels a little different. But then, like, because, like, Mega Man's my shit. I am all about it.
Yeah.
I actually learned that, like, okay, they're technically different people, and there are reasons for their different... It's like, as little lore there is, there was enough lore for it all to make perfect sense to me. That said...
You guys want to know how stupid I am? And it was not till I met Tyler that he actually corrected me, because I never got into the Mega Man series till I became friends with Tyler. When he originally asked if I ever played Mega Man, I said, yeah, I played Mega Man 10. Thinking it was Roman numerals.
Mega Man 10's so good, but you're wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong,
no,
Mega Man X is an incredible game, but it's funny because... Like,
I thought it was Roman numerals.
Yeah, that's not an uncommon take, but no, that's not it. But it is funny because, like, Mega Man X and Mega Man 7... Mega Man X technically came out before, but like you would just like, if you were a kid looking at the shelf, you'd be like, okay, I missed 3 of them, but like, I'm sure I'll get it. Yeah, no. See, it's tricky for me.
Was 6 the one with soccer and bass?
No, 6 is the one with Kefka. Oh wait, no, that was 3. Shut up. Mega Man Soccer. Jesus Christ, that was around the same.
Was it Warrior or Quest?
Adventure, actually. It's a Final Fantasy game, but it's mana.
No, I meant Dragon.
Dragon. Anyway.
Dragon Warrior, Dragon Quest.
Dragon Ball Z.
Shit.
So, I see, when I'm thinking about, like, retro games that, like, I got into later in life, a lot of retro stuff that I've played has been RPGs, and this is something that I think more so exclusive to myself, not you, because I'm more of an RPG person. But as retro as they get, they never really feel old. And I think it's because it's like, turn-based RPGs are kind of have a timeless formula. Like, yeah, they can have their jank and they can be dated in ways of like writing graphics, what have you. But just that standard formula, it's either a little faster or a little slower. But it's never old.
Here's kind of a point on that. I listed off a bunch of games that I haven't played till recently. Recently being like the last 5 years, anyways. Like Zelda 2, it is known as being archaic. Same with Castlevania 2. Very obtuse and archaic. Now, granted, I've known about some of the archaic stuff that is in them just from the copious amounts of YouTube videos I've watched. I went into it more with a different mindset than I do most games. It's like, yes, this is an old game. I am expecting X to happen, right? So
yeah,
it's kind of like when you're playing something for the first time and you know it's in the retro era, it's almost like I'm expecting this to be a thing, so it's not going to bother me like if I found it in a new game. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but
no, I think that makes sense.
I don't know.
Here's a really interesting take as well. So even though, like I said, I kind of find I have a hard time like sticking with a retro game these days right to the end. To contrast that point, if you were to give me a buffet of retro games beside a buffet of shiny new games, I'm going to have such an easier time trying different retro games than I am all the new ones.
Yep.
Like I can pick up something and it's like it's got the just weirdest looking cover art and just the title makes no sense. I'm like, yeah, let's pop it in. As where you could do the same with modern games, and like you said, without that familiarity, I'm less inclined to actually give stuff a shot.
Right. Yeah. No, it's just one of those things. It's like, oh, it's of the SNES era. I'm expecting this. It's of the NES era. I'm expecting this.
I get so
it's of the
hyped
Genesis.
for
I'm not a professional.
SNES era golf. Like,
yeah.
Or even SNES era, well, not all sports, I can't say. Well, like gimmicky sports, stuff like that. Like, you give me something that's like, it's got archery. I'm like, fuck yeah, I'm down. Probably bad, but I'll try.
Kirby's Dream Course.
What was the one that I was discussing in our our Build a NES Mini one? The track and field games, like shit like that.
Right.
I don't care about track and field, and I pick up that cartridge when I'm at like a secondhand store. I'm like, yo, I gotta try it. So it's $5. It's coming home with me.
I also know there's a lot of people out there that won't try retro, and I mean that's understandable. Like clearly we have nostalgic for it. Well, right? And I don't it's hard not to have that kind of bias whether it's actually a good game or not, or if it's just something that we accept how gaming was of this time frame.
But and to that note, because we've discussed this before, like it's almost easier to forgive a game for being bad because of its time. But I don't even think it's so much that. I think that there's joy in the jank from back in the day, right? Like, yeah, you can say that's just how things were, and some were made better than others. But you're willing to. It's like learning to walk when you got like a rock in your foot, and so you start angling your foot. You know, you don't just go, I don't want to walk anymore. But with new games, you're like, I'm not going to walk anymore. I'm not enjoying this. As where with the old games, it's a struggle, but you kind of find a way to work into it, and then you just get through it. Like Joe and Mac.
No, absolutely.
Joe and Mac doesn't feel very good. But I've seen that game through to the end just because it was like, I kind of got a feel for its weird, slow, floaty jumps. And yeah. It's
wacky, it's bizarre, and yet somehow fun, but it's full of jank.
That's exactly it.
Oh, Joe and Mac, I'm thinking of, what's that wacky one? Toe Jam and Earl.
Oh, yeah. Toe Jam and Earl's a really, really weird example.
It's wacky.
But it is very wacky.
It's a weird, like, it's like an early prototype of a roguelike.
It is a roguelike, which is so strange. It's so slow.
Right?
Yeah. You know, Joe and Mac is like, it's a 2-player co-op platform. Okay, here's one for the fans of the jank that I don't know if I've ever mentioned on the podcast before. I think I have. If you know this game, you know. Fucking Radical Rex, like, it's not a good game.
I do not know.
No, it's not a good game at all. You're like this little dinosaur that, like, you know, he's bipedal, breathes fire for whatever reason, because, like, dinosaurs didn't do that. There's a wizard, and also, like, one of your power-ups you can find is you just find skateboards in the middle of the jungle, and you just do, like, half-pipes and stuff. It's the only bit of, like, human technology in this, so you just get a half-pipe. It's so bad, but, like, you're like, yeah, I'm all about this.
That's wacky.
Yep.
That's yeah. I don't even know what to say about that.
I'd say look up Radical Rex. It's funny. It's not a bad game either, but it definitely got its jank.
I'm gonna have to check that out just because.
Yeah.
So that sounds wacky beyond anything.
Yep. It's 90s as fuck. That's the best way to describe it.
Yeah, and that was part of the charm too, right? So
you do tricks, and he says things like radical and awesome, like.
Oh, well, I think that's all I got. Oh, Mother 1 was another one. I think I might have mentioned that, but that kind of cheating, but not.
That one you definitely did through emulation, and that I think. At the end of today's lesson here, folks, what we really need to take away from this is it doesn't always have to be the way it was intended to be. Sometimes it's better if it is. But all the same, if you could find a way to love retro games, just have at it. Good time.
Yeah. You don't necessarily need original hardware, although we did talk it up pretty highly. Yeah. There's always ways to experience stuff that you may have missed. Just don't overwhelm yourself.
It's like learning an instrument, right?
Collection.
You know, you want to start playing guitar. You don't buy the fucking $500 Stratocaster right off the beginning. That's probably cheap for a guitar now that I think about it. But either way, you try it out. You play a little Crazy Train. And you're like, this is pretty good. Then you get the better amp and the stuff. Like you dip your toe in, and then if you find a fondness, then you get the better version.
Then you get kicked out of the guitar store for playing Stairway to Heaven.
Yep, every time. But yeah, if we're
enjoy retro, it's fun.
About to close things off here. If you wanna close us out, it's definitely getting very toasty in this recording box here.
As always, everyone, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Hope you enjoy retro games. To be honest, if you don't know what to start with, I'd say pick a list of a generation, like best Super Nintendo games. Find one that kind of appeals to you. Don't pick the everyday favorite.
Just
like
listen to us.
I mean, yes, it's good, but
that's all you need to do. Listen to us and play what we say is good.
Maybe. All right, Tyler, play Earthbound.
Maybe.
Thank you so much for everyone for listening. You can catch us over on Twitter. I still refuse to call it by its new name. Or Instagram at Optional Boss PC. You can also find us on YouTube. Just search up the Optional Boss podcast, and we will be on there as well for every episode. Thank you guys so much, and we will catch you next time.
Bye.
Let it go. Excellent. Awesome. Legendary. He's my real cool radical Rex. Radical Rex. He's so rad, he's my real cool radical Rex. Radical Rex. He's so rad, he's my real cool radical Rex. He's my real cool